du Journalisme in Tours, in France, and hosted by the studio of Radio Campus, and I would like to thank our friends from Radio Campus. So this radio podcast is recorded in the framework of the Sahafa Med project, funded by the European Union and implemented by Journalisme and Citoyenneté. This project aims to foster the dialogue between the journalists here in Europe and also in the Arab world, in the Arab countries. And we organize many activities. Recently we have had a one-day meeting in Paris at the Institut du Monde Arabe to create, let's say, a platform of dialogue in a very difficult geopolitical context in the region. And today we are in Tours to discuss about the challenges. We have the chance to welcome more than 15, around 20 journalists from all over the southern Mediterranean region, from North Africa and from Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Jordan. And it's a great chance to welcome our friends from the region. And today, here in the studio, we have 4 guests. Good morning, Jaber.
Good morning.
Jaber, you are originally from Syria. Manar, also from Syria. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We have Wael from the Samir Kassir Foundation in Lebanon.
Good morning. Hello.
And Loujain from Syria also, and from Radio Rosanna.
Yes, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being with us. So today we will discuss about the topic of journalism in exile because of what happened in the region since, let's say, 10 years. Many journalists have been forced to quit their countries. So in Europe today we have so many journalists originally from Syria, we have Egyptian journalists, we have now Tunisian journalists from all over the region. Trying to continue to practice journalism in different formats and different organizations, and it's becoming a big challenge because there are now dozens of journalists in Europe, and there is a need to structure maybe the things to help them to continue to practice journalism. So, first of all, I would like to ask to Loujain, when and how did you decide to quit Syria, and in which conditions? What was your, let's say, motivation? I don't know if we can say motivation. What was the reason? Let's say?
Yes, exactly. It's not motivation. Actually, it was a reason. And unfortunately, I was forced to leave my country. I was practicing journalism since 2007. I was a presenter and editor in the Syrian TV, official Syrian media. But after that, since 2011, and when the revolution started in Syria, the Syrian government, they refused to mention anything about the people who protest against the regime. And even in the private and like government media, they both just launching and presenting the government propaganda. And when we try to mention about what's happening inside the cities and about the people who protest against the regime, they refused. Even if we talk about it internally in the editorial meeting. And it started in one of the editorial meetings when we said that, I said actually that we have to mention about these people. We cannot lie the others that there is nothing happened inside Syria. Okay, we can mention that there is a group of people who protest against the regime, and also there is another group who are supported the regime, but they refused. Then I was arrested by the security intelligence forces. After I was released, the following from this intelligence still continue. After that, I have decided to leave the country in 2012.
And how did you do concretely to leave the country? Did you take the plane?
Yes, actually, at that time it's still not very controlled on the border, so I can leave the country by official way. I left to Lebanon, then to Egypt, then I came to France.
Manar, you arrived, I think, 2-3 years ago in France. Why France? Why Europe? Why not the United States? Why not Australia? Why not, I don't know, another country?
Yes, so this is so important question, especially I don't speak French, but I speak English. But I arrived in France a little bit more than 2 years ago. And the main reason, first of all, the reasons that forced me and my team, since I was the editor-in-chief of a website called Syria Direct, the Syrian colleagues were also left to France from Jordan, where we were based, that we didn't expect to leave Jordan and to be forced actually to leave Jordan. This came as a real surprise to us after many false accusations and interrogations. Frankly, we tried because we understood that situation is bad and going to get worse and worse. I tried to contact my colleagues also contact foreign embassies seeking like help to leave Jordan, because it became obvious that we have to leave. The French embassy in Jordan was extremely supportive. I'm sorry to say that. Other embassies maybe were not only pacifist but also indifferent. So the French embassy, at that point we were seeking like any place where we can like feel safe. And the French embassy, from the moment they heard about the story, they start like processing our application to get visa day, the visa that's issued for mostly for humanitarian reasons in general, and especially for journalists at risk. And they escalated the process. Of course, in addition to that, France, over the 10 years since the start of the revolution, or more than 10 years, got this reputation of helping journalists in general, but especially for the Syrians. So this was another reason why we chose France. And we managed to get the visa, me and my team, in almost like 3 months max. So it was a big relief. And so that was the main reason why France was the destination for me and my team. And of course, we used to say in the past, of course, Paris is the capital of Arab journalism. Relatively independent, but actually in the 80s it used to be like independent from some regimes affiliated with others. But all these things, we thought, yes, France would be amazing, and especially for people who are fleeing the country where they are living quickly, it's important to feel they are welcome. And this affected me and my team. I can speak for my team or former team. This was so important for us to feel that we are welcome in France, and this would help us actually to make like more confident start. So this is maybe all the circumstances that contributed to found ourselves in France in general, Paris and other cities.
Thank you, Mana. Well, so the Samir Kassir Foundation is really active in the field of assistance to journalists at risk. You welcome, I think, in Beirut, journalists from Yemen, from different countries. How do you work? What do you offer to them, and what are the challenges? Because it's one thing to welcome today journalist, and it's another thing to help him to reinvent a new life for the future, and after several weeks in Beirut. How do you do?
Yeah. So among the many different programs that the foundation runs to support journalists and independent journalism in the region. One of them is providing support to journalists at risk in their home country. So our safe hosting program at the Samir Kassir Foundation welcomes, like you said, journalists from Egypt, Sudan, Yemen, Iraq, also Syria in the past, and in a transitional supporting phase, and an option for them to be able to exit their home country where they're in danger or they're subject to aggression or oppression by the regime, by the existing state and their agencies because of their opinions and their opinions expressed on political and sensitive subjects. So, on reference, we welcome the different journalists in Beirut in preparation for them to, while they're preparing for their asylum and exile applications, whether with France or other countries. We provide them with medical, psychosocial, legal support during their stay in Beirut in Lebanon. And what we also try to do, like you said, David, is to help them start writing and producing and working during their stay, so that they can again start being productive and prepare themselves for the next chapter once they can finally reach their final asylum destination and start their life.
Is Beirut the final destination
for
them?
No, this is a temporary destination. And it's funny because the situation in Lebanon is not that good anyway in the first place, but it's still a good temporary transition phase for journalists in neighboring countries and the way out for them to a safer place. The interesting thing as well, or the difficulties, and I'm sure our colleagues here on the table will talk more about that, is that once they leave their home country where they're faced with imminent direct danger, the journey doesn't get easier probably, because they start facing other different types of challenges and difficulties, whether during their stay in Beirut in Lebanon, and even after, when they reach a safer home country in Europe or elsewhere. But this is something interesting also to talk about with our friends and colleagues on the table. If I'm not mistaken, Jabir, this is how we met Jabir many years ago through the foundation when he reached Beirut so that would be interesting also to learn more about his experience.
Yeah, Jabir, so you are based in France also. You are a researcher, but working on topics related to media violations and journalism rights. What happened when you arrived in France a few years ago? How did you try to install yourself? What was the challenges when you arrived?
Actually, it's a difficult question for me, because when I get Syria to Lebanon, I have my family there. I'm still with this family. I mean, Samir Kassir Foundation. I work with them like a correspondent in Syria. But when I arrived to France, I think in that time we will have our life, a new life in France. But it's not easy for the journalists to have their life in a new country in Europe. First of all, you have this difficult with the language. If you don't speak French, so you couldn't go and work with any French outlet in France. Even if you try to learn the language, it's not easy, because they're actually still not. There's no integration program, French integration program to get the people and put them in their experience and develop their experience to be qualified to work in this field in France. And this story, for me, it's something made me sad in that time. And I was in Strasbourg, because in Strasbourg, the capital of the European Parliament and other European entity. And in that time, I felt it's okay. I'm a journalist, but not anymore. I'm now like a retired journalist. I couldn't work in my field, so I worked with freelance online with some Arabic newspaper like Al Arab and some other Syrian outlets. Not all. We speak about 85% from the Syrian outlet and the diaspora. They closed it already, so we don't have our market to sell our job as a journalist. So this is the main question. And the other question, when you arrive to a new country in Europe, you have like a bureaucratic issues. You wait your paper to have you assigned, then you have your travel document, and travel document help you to visit just the European country. I'm a Syrian, I'm speaking Arabic, and so I would like to work about the Arabic issue, but I couldn't visit Egypt, even Tunis, Morocco, etc., because I need a visa. It's not easy to deal with it. So it's a lot of issues if we try to explain the situation for the journalists, the Syrian journalists in France. And if you try to comparing with the other country in Europe, like Netherlands, it's a different story. Because in Netherlands they have a special syndicate, a special association for the foreign journalists. They name it On File. They help the foreign journalists from different countries to get their language statement level, like say C1, C2, etc., to get their degrees and the journalism college, etc. And they help them to integrate the market, the media market in Netherlands. And I think this is something important. Push you the language the first, and the bureaucratic issue the second. Push you to change your career. I'm changing my career to be a researcher and work on the tough issue about the prison and the mass violence, etc. But it's not like a choosing issue to choose what you want, what you love, what you have this motivation to be a researcher. It's like something like a distance. You follow your step, and then you will find yourself as a researcher in some case. In the other case, you will find yourself like work in the storage or work in the construction company, work in Bijo, etc., etc. I know a lot of story about the Syrian journalists work now in the random job because they couldn't have this opportunity to be in the media market in France. So,
yeah. It's a good transition because I would like to ask you, any of you, when you are here now today, do you have contacts with European media? Do you have the opportunities to work with European media outlets, with European journalists? Or do you have opportunities to work for the media from your country of origin? I don't know who wants to answer. Manar, maybe.
I want to comment on something very important mentioned by Jaber. And in addition, or in spite of all these difficulties Jaber mentioned, and they are just a small part of the real problems journalists could face in Europe, we feel that by abandoning journalism, actually we made dictators in the Arab world really win. Because the main target, whether in Syria or any other country, of course, I had to flee Jordan, but we believe that we were part of the normalization process between Jordan and Bashar al-Assad. But even if we survived like being arrested or tortured or abused, by abandoning journalism, we are making these dictators win. We don't exist even as a statistics. We are arrested, we forcibly disappeared, luckily, but at the same time, our work, we lost our work when we abandoned journalism. So just by being safe, and we are safe in Europe, and not practicing journalism, actually the dictators in the region win. So this is a serious issue. So sometimes we insist, at least I'm talking about myself, we insist on doing some kind of journalism to challenge the dictators to the last minute. You didn't win, I will fight to the last minute. And many people think the same way, I believe. Being in touch with Western media, it's of course it depends on the case. The Syrian conflict became what's called protracted conflict, And it's like out of the interest, especially, thanks God, there are no more atrocities like before, but at the same time the situation is so bad. So it's not news anymore, and we have other urgent conflicts in the region and even in Europe, the Russian war against Ukraine, for example. So we try to invent like our opportunities. In my case, now I'm working with Sahafa Med to produce practical reports about the needs of journalists in the Arab world, which is so important. This keeps me in touch with the journalists in Syria in general and in exile. And also I give training to journalists on the ground. This is contribution, but again, the fund also is decreasing. So the opportunity is not necessarily like before. And we have, in addition to the language, we have the interest, etc., etc. So it depends on in each case. Sometimes I would say it's about luck. But
Lujane?
Yeah, maybe I have some comments about
And
the
maybe
dialogue that we
concrete
talk.
examples.
Yeah. Actually, I think after the problem with the language, there is coming there is another level of problems coming, that the competition. It's a regular competition between the expertise of the Syrian journalists who just arrived to France and other journalists who already studied in the University of the Journalism University in Paris, or even with all these schools of media that we see here, and this Assises, that how many of them, and we were discussed yesterday that the French children learning the media since they are young. It's not something coming when you are mature. The other things that I can say from our level, for Radio Rosanna, that we face a lot of problem when we want to hire a Syrian journalist, because as Manar said, that there is a problem coming with the fund and with the money, so we cannot hire, because the hiring a journalist, it will be cost you a lot. So all the time you are thinking to hire some people who are as a freelance out of France. So I can now, as a Syrian media working in France, hire or collaboration or work with someone who in Germany or Netherlands. It will be better and less cost for me, rather than I will hire someone here in France. So I will not benefit our community here in France. About the collaboration, of course, we make a lot of collaboration. We have a very great successful one, that we were part of the Panama Papers project. It was very interesting experience, and also during the 10 years now we have different projects that we work with the Western journalists. Last one, it was even with the Guardian and with Lighthouse. We have a very good experience with the investigation journalist, and also some project with the podcast. But it's coming less and less and less until the war in Ukraine started. So the Western media started to think, okay, let's go having this bridge between what happened in Ukraine with Russia and in Syria. So the Syrian cases being at in the front again. But all the time that when we are trying to work about Syrian cases or what's happening in Syria, it's coming with the Russian war view. It's not what's happening now inside Syria, because nobody, or it will be collaborate for working on jihadist issues, on jihadist reports, but not about the civilian Syrian. That what happened inside, how the suffer is coming, how now even with the cyber crimes that the regime launched before 2 years, the freedom it will be more controlled and everything, and even for the freedom of the woman, gender, and that issues in the north of Syria and the east of Syria the same. So it's not about talking about the Syrian issues or as a Syrian case. No, it's maybe will be related to jihadists or for the Syrian, with the Russian war. So not all the time will be collaborate, very helpful to talking about the Syrian case again. It's not like that. And even now, the problem that when there's some of the European country coming to support the revision for the Al-Assad regime again in Syria, they stop to want to support some projects who will be maybe against of the Syrian government. And we see how the map of the fund coming very, very different now. Even the UN now, they want to just to support the projects that supporting the recovery inside Syria, not for the people who are outside. And even in Turkey, the same, in Europe, the same. So it's coming very hard for the Syrian journalists to work, even as in a collaboration, because as Jaber mentioned, that now if you want to work in media, you will be like an expert in Arab world. It's not like about you are Syrian journalist, but how many of these people who can know about what's happening in Egypt, as I will know what happened in Egypt, similar to the Egyptian journalist, or I can benefit and give you exactly what's happening inside the Syrian country. So the collaboration depends on the project, depends on the goals for the other media goals, not what we want to say about our country as a Syrian journalist.
I understand. So let's dream now, and if we had to invent something to maybe to help the journalists in exile, the media in exile, what will be efficient, what will be useful according to you? Which kind of, well, you have experiences at the foundation, so
I guess adding to Manar and Lujan's experience and comments and ideas, I think there's a need for a change in the perception of journalists in exile, and the change in the political will of everyone who considers themselves, whether in Europe or in the world, as fighters for freedom of expression. There's a need for a perception that journalists in exile are an asset, a valuable asset. They're not a burden, a refugee burden, because if all the media outlets based in Europe and in the world, who struggle to get the information that they want from the ground, from the local on-site places of war or of trouble which they're trying to report on. The journalists in exile are their primary and valuable asset to share these experiences and the connections with the right people and the right information on the ground. So there's a need for that change in perception, and we struggle with that in the foundation because, for example, the Safe Hosting Support Program that we run related to that support is one of the programs that we suffer the most to find continuous support from our international and donors and partners, because this is one of the hardest. And although it's important to note that all the journalists that we support in our program have all their legal paperwork and they're working and applying according to the law, so it's not supposed to be a burden. It shouldn't be perceived as a burden. This is already like from the start a need for the political will to look at it differently and act upon it. And also, like Lujan was saying, the value of collaborating with Arab journalists that are found and end up in France or in Europe in general should be perceived in its true value, because these collaborations will lead to much better quality of information and journalism, and much more accurate than what we have and what we see when they send correspondents or they send foreign teams to these countries where they're trying to report and get the information and the truth of what's happening there. So there's definitely that need for that change, and through communication, I think, through conversations like these, through panels like the ones that we participate and take part of, whether at les Assises or through the program of Sahafa Med. And in fact, one of the recommendations from the Sahafa Med study was to push all the media stakeholders, whether the donors, the media organizations, regional ones, to listen more to the local actors and to the local players on the ground in different countries, because they have the raw data, they have the primary data, which is most accurate compared to the international and regional stakeholders.
Thank you. Well, Jaber, maybe you have something to add on this particular. What can be done to maybe to make something for or with the journalists in exile that, as you say, should be considered as maybe an added value and not a charge.
Actually, I have a story, not just something to say it. When I was in the prison in Saydnaya in Syria, every morning we listening for Monte Carlo and BBC. BBC it closed now, the Arabic version, and Monte Carlo still work. We hope